However, heaven did not cut off all paths for people. The violent tremors caused by the avalanche made a large crack open in the steep mountain slope before us, leading straight downwards. The blinding flood of snow from the sky rushed down, and everyone, without hesitation, exerted themselves to plunge into the crack in the rocky mountain. The slope below was very steep. They hadn't expected the vertical distance to be so great. The five of them rolled together, tumbling several times before falling to the bottom of a large cave. Immediately after, a large block of snow also fell, sealing the crack. Countless snowflakes erupted violently, causing everyone to cough, choking. The rumbling sound overhead only quieted down much later. Hearing those noises, it was impossible to tell how many tens of thousands of tons of snow had fallen above. In the pitch dark cave, nothing could be discerned. Everyone considered themselves to have escaped death. Only after a long while did someone speak. It was clearly a northeastern accent, immediately recognizable as Andu's. Whoever can still breathe, try to make a sound. Hu Bayi Kawa Lu Luoning. Is everyone here? I felt my entire body's bones were shattered, too painful to speak. I only groaned a few times to signal that I was still alive. Kawa responded with a sound, then pulled out a flashlight to shine around. Luoning sat on the ground, her eyes vacant, seemingly unharmed. Lu lay beside her, eyes tightly closed and unconscious. His left leg was broken, half a white bone protruding outside. The mountain crevice we fell into was both deep and narrow. Beyond the area illuminated by the flashlight, it was pitch black, with restricted visibility, so we didn't know the terrain further ahead. Andu reached out to check Engineer Lu's breath, then immediately dropped his hand, trembling. "It's over." He stopped breathing. I crawled over and felt his carotid artery. He was indeed dead, his heart no longer beating. I sighed and told Andu, "Let's bury him." I took out a trenching shovel, intending to dig a hole. Kawa, standing nearby, quickly stopped me, pointing to the ground and stammering, "Bugs fire." Kawa's reminder made me recall that earlier, when we wanted to dig a grave for the engineer who fell to his death, we unearthed a monstrous bug. Our 14-person team, in those few terrifying minutes, lost 10 people. It seemed this land couldn't be casually dug into. Only heaven knew what devils lay beneath. But no matter what, we couldn't leave our comrade's body exposed like this, so we had to adopt a compromise. I held the flashlight for Kawa and Andu to collect rubble from around and pile it onto Lu's body, essentially building a crude stone grave for him. Throughout this entire process, Luoning remained motionless in one spot, silently watching Lu's stone grave. Finally, she could no longer hold back and burst into sobs, the repressed pain in her heart overflowing like a breached dam. I intended to comfort her, but truly didn't know what to say. Moved by her crying, my nose also tingled, and my heart felt like it was being cut. I remembered last night, the whole team gathered around the campfire, singing military songs. Their voices almost still echoed in my ears, yet today, most of our comrades were forever sleeping peacefully beneath the cold Kunlun River. I helped Luoning stand up, and together we bowed our heads in silent tribute to Lu and our other comrades. In those days, no matter the circumstance, one had to quote from the selected works of Mao Zedong. I began to recite. Across the sky white spreads, through the snow our hearts march with eagerness. The other three joined in unison. Young peaks topped high, overpasses the red flag flies. Only those with great resolve sacrifice, daring to turn sun and moon, change the sky. Having said that, everyone raised their right hand and swore, "Comrades, in arms, comrades, please rest in peace." A person's death can be as light as a feather, but it can also be heavier than Mount Tai. A death for the benefit of the people is heavier than Mount Tai. You have sacrificed for the benefit of the people. We will certainly inherit the will of our revolutionary predecessors. We will certainly follow in the footsteps of the revolutionary path stained red with the blood of our comrades, thoroughly advance the great proletarian cultural revolution, and final victory will forever belong to our worker, peasant, soldier class. At that time, I was still a new recruit, having never participated in a comrade's memorial service before. I didn't know what to say, only remembering that people always spoke like this in meetings. In that situation, it no longer mattered whether it was appropriate or not. After a very long time, everyone calmed down and cursorily treated their injuries. Fortunately, they were all minor and didn't affect movement. We ate a few pieces of dry biscuits and gathered to discuss what to do next. Escaping through the snow-filled crevice was impossible. I guess the entire crevice had likely been completely filled with snow. Now, the only option was to find another way out. Kawa patted his empty ammunition pouch, indicating that they didn't have much ammunition left. When entering the mountains, because they had to carry a lot of equipment, they were only allocated the lowest amount of ammunition, each person equipped with only 3 magazines. After all, it wasn't a combat mission, and there were no bandits in this area. Earlier, during the avalanche, they had discarded some ammunition. Now, each person only had about 20 rounds left, and a total of 2 grenades. There were probably no wild beasts underground, so much ammunition wasn't useful. Enough for self-defense was sufficient. But dry rations were completely gone. Everything edible had been consumed just now. In the next 2 days, they absolutely had to find a way out, or they would starve to death here. The only stroke of luck in their misfortune was that Luoning still had a compass. The depth of this crevice was beyond our imagination. After walking a section towards the south, the path ended and the crack turned north. It felt as if we were walking beneath a glacier river. In the darkness, we walked for about 10 hours. The terrain became steeper and steeper as we went, and the space also widened. Luoning used an altimeter to take a reading. Converting the atmospheric pressure reading to an equivalent altitude above sea level, it was only a little over 400 meters, similar to the Sichuan region and much lower than the over 4,000 meters of the Qinghai, Tibet Plateau. If we continued to descend like this, we might end up going into the center of the earth. The terrain finally leveled out. Faintly, we heard the sound of rushing water, seemingly a large underground river not far away. I saw that perhaps the path was no longer steep, so I took out my flashlight and shone it all around to see if there was any upward path. Suddenly, I discovered the flashlight beam hitting the rock face, flashing weak reflections like shining onto countless broken mirror shards. Luoning exclaimed in surprise, "It's mica." The 3 of us didn't know what mica was, even though Luoning said it. But hearing her voice, which seemed very frightened, we all thought there was an emergency and quickly ran up to shield her. We pulled the Type 56 automatic rifles from our backs as fast as possible, flipped off the safety, chambered rounds with clicks, and prepared to aim. Luoning asked in surprise, "What are you doing?" While raising my rifle defensively, I asked Luoning back, "What mica? What kind of creature? Where?" Luoning replied, "It's not a creature, I meant that all around here are crystals. Mica and common quartz usually appear in the same geological strata. And indeed there's quartz here too." Although Luoning was mainly responsible for mapping, she frequently worked with geological survey teams, so her knowledge of minerals was extensive. The crystals around us, resembling shards of glass, were a type of monoclinic crystal, appearing only in ancient bimetallic rock strata abundant in the Hu Bayi regions underground. However, the mica here was hexagonal prismatic and very dark in color. Its quality far surpassed the domestic variety. Just by looking at the mica's color, we could tell that our current position was at an unimaginable depth. Luoning was fascinated by the rare mica blocks, examining one after another. I casually picked up a small block to look at, but couldn't see anything valuable about it. Just then, we suddenly heard Andu call out to Kawa, "Kawa, what are you doing? Get up now." I immediately shone the flashlight and saw Kawa prostrating himself on the ground, kowtowing in the Tibetan style. What was this kid doing? Kowtowing to whom? I shone the light further in front of him, and couldn't help but exhale a cold breath. Who would have thought that deep underground stood a towering wooden pagoda in the shape of the character Jin, constructed from thousands of large timber logs. The pagoda shimmered with countless red lights. Borrowing that faint light source, we could see the pagoda's base was nearly 200 meters wide, compacted with earth and stone. The pagoda body was built from 1,000-year-old cypress wood, totaling 9 stories. Each story was filled with dried skeletons wearing bizarre ancient clothing, with old and young, male and female alike. Each wooden log was carved with mysterious Tibetan script. Was this a tomb? Of such vast scale, who had built it underground? Luo Ning, who had been engrossed in examining the mica until now, heard our whispers and also ran closer to see. I waved my hand, signaling Andu not to interrupt, and continued to ask Kawa, "What kind of pagoda is this? Can you read the writing on it?" Kawa shook his head vigorously. I continued, "That's absurd. If you don't understand, why kowtow? Are you stunned by all the bones?" Kawa's face was filled with panic. He stammered in broken Mandarin. They told Kawa to speak. Kawa doesn't know how to speak, but they kept making Kawa speak. This is the 9-story demon tower. 9 stories. I didn't quite understand the first half of his sentence, but the last 4 words were very clear. I pressed him. "What 9-story demon tower? What is it for? Isn't it for burying the dead?" Before Kawa could answer, Luo Ning tiptoed back from the base of the pagoda, then gestured for us not to speak, and quietly pointed towards the pagoda behind her, saying, "Don't disturb them." I looked at Luo Ning's serious expression, knowing that we must have encountered trouble, but I didn't know what she was referring to, so I lowered my voice and asked, "Disturb what?" "The corpses in the pagoda?" Luo Ning replied, extremely tense. "No, it's the firebugs. They sleep inside the corpses, countless of them." Hearing Luo Ning say that, I realized that the countless red glowing points all over the pagoda's body were emitted by those transparent bugs. Although I claimed to possess the fearless spirit of a revolutionary soldier, to some extent, whenever I thought of that monstrous firebug, my heart was filled with extreme dread. This type of creature, beyond common understanding, was truly too difficult to deal with. The fear left in me by the gruesome scene in the mountain crevice was indeed overwhelming. I signaled for everyone to quietly retreat the way we came, but after only a few steps, Kawa suddenly stumbled and fell into a ditch. This ditch was hidden from sight and ran parallel to our path, so no one had noticed it when we entered. Although the ditch was only a little over a meter deep, Kawa still let out a faint cry. I quickly jumped down to help him up, only to see Kawa clutching his leg, his face filled with extreme pain. By then, Luo Ning and Andu also followed into the ditch. As the flashlight beam reached, they discovered that Kawa had been impaled through both his shoe and foot by a sharp bone shard, bleeding profusely. All over the ditch, countless bleached animal bones were piled crisscross, an immeasurable quantity. It seemed this ditch must have been a sacrificial pit for buffalo, horses, goats, or dogs. To avoid disturbing the firebugs in the pagoda, Andu covered Kawa's mouth to prevent him from crying out. I pulled the bone shard out of Kawa's leg. Luo Ning immediately took Yunnan Baiyao from the first aid kit, sprinkled it on the wound, then used cotton bandages to help Kawa stop the bleeding. My hands were covered in blood from Kawa's leg. Casually, I wiped some onto my military uniform. A thought suddenly occurred to me. This sacrificial pit for buffalo and horses was clearly very strange. It wasn't round or square but dug into a long ditch, leading straight to the wooden pagoda where the bodies were placed. Such a shape perfectly matched a layout called Ni mentioned in Feng Shui secret arts. If that were truly the case, then parallel to this ditch, there should be another sacrificial ditch of similar scale. 2 parallel sacrificial ditches, tightly flanking the wooden pagoda structure of the tomb, formed a 2 dragons contending for a pearl formation. Based on this reasoning, the other ditch should contain the daily necessities of the tomb's owner. However, it was unclear whether these 2 sacrificial ditches were naturally formed or man-made, though the former seemed more likely. The sound of rushing water nearby was very loud. Judging by the sound, it was likely located to the northwest, which also meant there was an underground river behind the 9-story demon tower because dragons cannot leave water. If everything was indeed as I predicted, then the map of this underground area was already clear in my mind. All that remained was to find the second sacrificial ditch, to confirm my deductions. Andu nudged my shoulder and called, "Yi! What's wrong?" I was lost in thought, but a nudge brought me back. I quickly asked Luo Ning, "Engineer Ning, can you calculate our current position? Roughly, where is it on the map?" Luo Ning took out her compass, referenced the map, and calculated for a moment. She pondered briefly, then replied, "We've been heading north continuously for more than 10 hours now. Based on our speed, we must have long since passed the glacier river above us, and are probably about to exit the Kunlun mountain range." I voiced my thoughts from earlier, then said, "Now, if we turn back, we can only return to the crevice sealed by snow. And if I'm not mistaken, if we follow this underground river, we'll surely find a way out. But doing so would require us to risk passing beneath the 9-story demon tower, a plan to find life within death." The four of them discussed for a while, feeling that although such an endeavor was fraught with danger, it was worth risking once. However, I decided that I must first find the second sacrificial ditch to confirm my theory. Before acting, I asked Kawa what exactly the 9-story demon tower was. Kawa struggled greatly to speak Mandarin, stammering until I finally understood part of it. In Hyatt V, his hometown, there was also a ruin identical to this 9-story demon tower. Legend has it that the 9-story demon tower was the type of mausoleum and coffin chamber for the ancient kings of the Demon Kingdom. When the Demon Kingdom fell, that tomb was destroyed by the heroic King Kasser. Today, on the Tibetan plateau, only a pile of ruined wooden frames remains, along with the oral epic of the herdsmen, eternally praising the glorious sun-like achievements of King Kasser. Whenever the Tibetan herdsmen passed by this ruin, they would prostrate themselves and kowtow, reciting epics. This was not at all out of fear of the mausoleum of the Demon Kingdom's kings, but to show respect to King Kasser. Kawa also spoke of some religion-related matters, but I didn't understand much. It was hard to tell whether the bugs, like demonic fire, were the spirits resting in the tomb or not. I left Luo Ning and the other two in their original spot and crawled forward alone. Sure enough, about 100 meters from the buffalo and horse sacrificial ditch, there was another sacrificial ditch filled with ancient leather boots, bronze ware, jewelry, wooden animal figures, wooden tablets inscribed with ancient Tibetan and Mongolian scripts, food, and a large quantity of silk brocade burial items. It seemed my speculation was correct. The underground river behind the 9-story demon tower surely led outside. I quietly returned to the animal sacrificial ditch and called the other three to continue on our way. I led the way, and Du followed with his rifle, then came Kawa. His leg injury was not light, so Luo Ning had to walk behind, helping him along. The 9-story demon tower was very large. This underground cavern was originally very wide, but the pagoda and the two mica veins on either side had almost completely blocked the path to the north. Only two very narrow gaps remained on the sides, barely wide enough to squeeze through. We passed beneath the pagoda with trepidation, looking at the bugs flickering like specks of fire within the pagoda. It felt as if our hearts would burst from our chests. The path beneath the pagoda was only 200 meters, but each step felt impossibly long.